Play mode.
Hi, hi everyone. Yeah, you guys have any questions for me?
Hi.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, I was having some problems with uploading the photo. I was using the same code, but there were some problems. Maybe after the class you can take a look at it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, any other questions? Or you guys have any difficulty in the? I think you might by going through the code. You had any difficulty in understanding any part of it? No, add to cart feature is nothing but it's a business logic. There is nothing called feature about it. It's all about session management only. If you remember that we created a session actually, HTTP session request.get session ID session dot add session dot set attribute. So your request attribute lives only for one page, whereas session attribute lives for until you invalidate it. Your session attribute will be alive until you invalidate. So you just need to keep on adding session dot set attribute. That's it. That's how you do add to cart. But add to cart, there are two things to do. One will be done on the client side, one will be done on the server side. Now what exactly happens is, if you look at this, you don't need to log into any of the website to add to cart. You can just browse it. You didn't log in here. Now without login, you cannot do, you didn't log in, but still you are able to add into the cart. Now this is done using JavaScript. Adding to cart is done through JavaScript here. Now once you log in, then you can also do it with the session. So add to cart feature can be obtained by both the ways. One is using a pure JavaScript. So in order to do it with the JavaScript, you don't need to log in. It remembers your browser identity. It remembers your browser identity and with the help and in the form of cookies it will be stored. Whereas once you log in, then you can also store it with the help of the session. How do you do it with the help of the session? Then we did one example, session management using session API. Look, a person logs in and once he successfully logs in, you are storing the user identity in the form of session dot set attribute. Alright? And you can obtain this attribute whenever you want by invoking session dot get attribute. So what you can do is, after login, if user is selecting some items, you can add all those items to the session. How will you add all those items to the session? By invoking the set attribute method. And when you click on the submit, you want to calculate. So you can invoke session dot get attribute to calculate the bill. You can invoke session dot get attribute to calculate the bill amount. You just make an attempt. You can just take an example, right? Just have a login window, and once you log in, display few products, and go to another page, display few more products. On first page, pick up some products and add it to the session. Second page, pick up some products and add it to the session. And on the final page, get all the products and calculate the bill amount. Just keep trying, try to implement one example. If you have any difficulty, I'll help you out. Yeah. Guys, any other questions from others? Okay. So I just quickly recap JSP tags. Did you do it right away, or yeah, I think I got it. Oh, it's regarding. Okay. Let me look at it. Then I'll probably do it in the next class. I'll see if it is something really useful. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, it's a server-side implementation, not JavaScript implementation. He has written custom methods. Okay, anyhow, we will discuss probably in the next class also. That is a routine implementation only. We will discuss it anyhow. Okay, let me come back to the JSP. So what I was trying to tell you last day was we discussed the demerits of servlet and merits of JSP, and we also discussed the merits of servlet and demerits of JSP. So what is that? We found that servlets are good in request processing but poor in presentation. Servlets are good in request processing and poor in presentation, whereas JSP are good in presentation. You all know why, but poor in request processing. Why JSP is poor in request processing? As JSP needs to get converted. JSP needs to get converted to servlet. JSP are good in presentation but poor in request processing, as JSP needs to get connected to servlet, as JSP needs to get converted to servlet. So what we do is we replace servlets of output package. We replace servlets of output package with JSPs, whereas servlets in controller don't get affected. They still remain servlets in controller still remains as servlet. Whereas servlets in controller still remains as servlet. Now, so we saw, right? We write Java in HTML using special tags. And yesterday I discussed these special tags are, I hope you have gone through the reference link, are classified as directives, then what, scripting, then what, actions. Then the directives, you have a page directive, include directive, tag lib directive. And in the scripting you have scriptlets, declarations, expressions. So you have a using, set property, get property, param, plugin, callback, forward. Then I spoke about the page directive. This is how you write the directives. Page. Import is an attribute. There are many attributes. So we saw import attribute. What else we saw? We saw content type attribute. We also saw language attribute. So what language we're going to use in a JSP file. And content type is what type of content type is allowed. Another thing is the encoding standard. It is the character set we are using. The character set we are using. Then we have a lot of other things, there is one more attribute called error page. There is another attribute called either page. There is another attribute called thread save. We got error page, either page, thread save. And almost discussed 7 of them. There are 3 more. There is something called buffer, right? So I asked you to go through this. javateapoint.com, and you see a lot of attributes if you look at the page directive. Yeah, auto flush, buffer, I wrote it. Then there is something called session, auto flush, easily ignored. So we will be discussing them later. Then I also spoke about the scriptlets. In case if you want to write any Java snippet, you write between this. Now in case if you want to print the value of any variable, now in case if you want to declare any, this is expression. Now in case if you want to declare any variable, this is how we do. Declare any variable or define any method. Declare variable and define methods to do within this. Now, what I was trying to do yesterday, I was trying to replace those output package servlets with JSP. So there was a single record.jsp file. Alright, I'll quickly do them again. Now look at this. You have here controller, get servlet. So what it says, instead of calling a servlet, you are calling a JSP file, and you are setting the request attribute. Now, when you go to the single record.jsp, now how do we get the value? So as I said, you write a snippet inside a special tags. These are called scriptlets. These are your scriptlets. Then you need to import a user. You observe the first line. You are importing a user class from a DTO package. Then we all know that when you say request.getAttribute, it returns an object. When you say request.getAttribute, it returns an object. You convert it to integer. You convert into user object type. That's it. Then after that, you don't need to say print writer. Actually, in servlets we do this. Print writer out equals to response.getWriter. But you don't need to do this here. We don't need to do this here. The reason being, out is an implicit object. That is, there are 9 implicit objects. 9 implicit objects. Now, what do you mean by implicit objects? What do you mean by implicit objects? Which are already existing. And one don't need to create them. They're already existing. Right? And one of them is out. So I can happily print name u dot get the first name, get the last name, then have a break. You got a name, a new gender. What else we have? Mobile number. Email address. Get mobile number. Get the gender. We are done with this stuff. So let me say get.html. See, it is very easy if you understand the concepts of servlets very well. The JSP is much easier. Then I say here that. So you were able to get the details of the user Arun Kant G. Now this is like, you write Java inside HTML. You write Java inside HTML using special tags. But what exactly we need to do is, it is a good programming practice. It is a good programming practice not to use Java inside a HTML, not to use Java inside a JSP tag. It is a good programming practice to not to use JSPs or not to use Java inside a special tag. So we try to avoid Java. We try to avoid Java. Look at the other way what I'm doing here. So I will show you all the possibilities. Look at this here. I want to print a name. Name percentage equal to get the first name, then give some space, this is to add space in HTML. So you have the name, then you need a break statement. You got a gender, mobile number, email address. Now you see you are not using out.println. In simple you say expression tag and you say to print it. But though you are using Java here, but it is less in comparison to your previous example. You are not doing out.println. It's much lesser. It's much lesser than your previous example. Right. So let me mention here. Using expression tags. Using pure Java. Now you have the other way of doing it. Now I'm going to using use be in action and get property. Look at this here. This will be interesting because it doesn't look like Java now here. So how do I get the attribute is, look, JSP:\use_b. Now if you go back to the servlet, what is the attribute name, alias name? The same alias name you need to pick it up, put here. That is, when you say request dot get attribute, you use something in the double quotes, right? That should be used here. But that is an object, but it is stored under which scope? It is stored under the request scope. You did request dot set attribute, so it is from the request scope. And the object is of which type? The object is of which type? That is, you are typecasting it to whom? You are typecasting it to user. That's it. So this line is equivalent to line number 38 is equivalent to line number 27. Then after that, name JSP:\get property. Which property you want to access? I want to access the first name. of which object? The user object which is created in the line number 38. Similarly, I can display the rest of them. I can display the rest of them. For the first name, last name, then you can say gender, mobile number, email address. Gender, mobile number, and email address. There's also one more property called date of birth. You can also get that. Just refresh it. You see there is no break statement, so I can add a break statement there after every tag. Now observe how it look like. Is it looking like Java? It's not look like Java, right? It looks like completely tag based syntax. It's completely looks like tag based syntax, and this is a good programming practice which we are recommended to follow. This is something we are recommended to follow, not these things. Of course, if you have no knowledge about it, then you cannot do anything. It is better you use this part. But if you have a sound knowledge of JSP, then what is recommended is this. Not to use Java code inside a HTML, inside a JSP. Always use the tag-based syntax to get the dynamic data. This I discussed in the last class, but somehow I felt to reiterate it again, so I'm doing this stuff. Now what next? Right? This is what using tag-based syntax. Action tags. JSP colon use bean and JSP colon get property. I'll tell you one more powerful way of doing this. I'll tell you one more powerful way of doing this. That is, observe here. I'm saying expression language. I'm not saying expression tag. Your expression tag was different. Now I'm saying this is expression language. I hope you guys are observing what I'm doing here. Now this is the powerful of all of them. This is the powerful of all of them. There is something wrong here. Yeah. First name, last name, gender, mobile number, email address, date of birth. Because user object is stored in the request code. Yeah. Any questions so far, or is it good? All right. If you guys are good with this, let me move on to the multi-record.jsp. Multi-record.jsp. Now what I was doing on a multi-record? I was storing array list in request scope. The array list is stored in the request scope. Now I need to display that array list values on the multi-record.jsp. So first let me do it with a pure what is that? Pure Java. How? Using your scriptlets. And what is that? Request dot get attribute. What is the attribute mean? User list. It's an array list of type user. And we all know request.getAttribute will give you object. So I'm typecasting it to array list of user type. Then there is a for loop. That's it. I just get these lines. It's done. So let me invoke getAll.html. Right click, run as, run on server. Get all. See, you get all the records. So let me add some break statements in multi-record.jsp before and after. This will do good. Now what next for you in the multi-record.jsp? So you can achieve it with the help of expressions also. You can also achieve it with the help of expressions. You have this inside. You cannot have two variables sharing the same name. So let's say U list. Then what? I need to use expression tags, right? So look at this. I'm writing a for loop. Then I'm closing the scriptlet. Look at this. You guys just need to observe carefully what is happening. It's not complicated. You just write C. You have a scriptlet holding Java, but you open the for loop and you are again opening and closing it. Now within the here, this is what? Without any, this is only the HTML area. Now here you can write you guys observe carefully here. What I'm doing is this. It's a very simple thing. So you are using expression. So this is what the advantage of your scriptlet actually. Right? So wherever you want you can start and wherever you want you can end it. So you started and you ended, but you didn't close the loop. But before you close the loop you wrote some expression and normal text. Then once you are done you have your loop closed. So whatever is here that will be repeated for loop times. If your loop got 5 records, it will be repeated for 5 times. Using expression tags. Using expression tags. Go to the bottom. Using expression tags. Then as usual you can add a break statement after a very record. And you can refresh to see. Done. So this is using your what? Expression tags. Now in case if you want to use your action tags. In case if you want to use your action tags. Using action, use bean and get property. Using action and get property. Then here we go. And how will you do it? Simple. JSP colon use bean. What is this request dot get attribute? User list. This should be used here. Then what else? In which scope? Yeah, this was stored in the request scope. Then what is other one? Scope equal to request. Then you have something called class. Class equal to what? Java dot util dot array list. But actually it's an array list of user type. It's an array list of user type. But I try to specify. Let's see whether it works or not. You see this stuff? Yeah, it got resolved. DTO user. Right. Now, how do you display? You have your action tag. But how do you display it now? How do you display it now? Now you have left with no other option. Use for loop. You are left with no other option. Use for loop. Bracket open. Then again the same kind of stuff we need to do. It's what? User. So you have to use scriptlet to use for loop. You have to use scriptlet to use for loop. So you got an exception. This is invalid. The way you specified is invalid. The way you specified is invalid. So this is not allowed in JSPs. So what I should do is, I should treat it as an object. Then I should convert it. I should convert it. Using your action tags, use bin and get property. So you obtain it as an array list of objects and you are converting that object to user type, because we know that the array list is holding what? User objects. Right. I hope everybody is clear so far, because it's the same routine stuff. Now how will I do it with expression tags? How will I do it with expression language, not expression tags? Using the expression language. In order to print it using the expression language, there is a concern here, because you have an array list. What is the array list name? Users list. So first count how many records you have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, you have 6 records in total. You have 6 records in total. So here we go. You guys focus here. Expression language. multi-record.jsp. Now it won't be user, it will be user list of 0. Now this is how you access, if you want to access it using expression language. Now you have to repeat this stuff for the 6 records. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, again 6 records, right? You got 5, you got 5, 5, 5, 5, 4, 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3. Two, two, two. One, one, that's it. You're still able to get the data, expression language. But it doesn't make any sense, right? If you have 100 records, you don't expect yourself to write 100 times like this. Okay, but what you use loop. But loop is something like a Java program. But what is recommended? What is a good programming practice? The good programming practice is not to use the loops or not to use Java on the JSP. But you have no other option. You have to use Java because you cannot do like this, right? If you have 100 records, you cannot do like this 100 times. So you have to depend on a loop. So to write a loop, you need to use scriptlets. But they said this is not a good programming practice. Then what is the solution we have? The solution is, before I go to the solution, do you guys have any questions for me? Or is it very clear for you all? Okay. So if you have no questions, let me discuss the next one. We have some tag library. So let me get some jar files actually. I need some jar files again. So I'll just go to the previous workspaces and I try to get them. Yeah, I have some two jar files. One is standard, other one is JSTL. I'll tell you what is JSTL stands for. JSTL stands for Java Server Pages Standard Tag Library. I'm adding those jar files to the lib folder. Then again I do this stuff here. Got a break tag. And again I say history using JSTL. Now what is this JSTL stands for? Java Server Pages Standard Tag Library. So again we have a library. You will be understanding the power of this library. Just focus here. Then I say percentage at the rate tag lib URI. Look at this part. I'm using JSTL core and there is a prefix C. So what exactly happening is, this is like you are importing your library into the current JSP file. Alright, what is the library? You are importing the library called core library from JSTL. You are importing the core library from JSTL and you will understand the power of this. Right? You will understand the power of this. If you remember, you have this line JSP colon use green ID equal to user list, right? Okay. Now look at this part. It's so powerful, JSTL C colon for each. Items. What is that? User list. item equal to users list, then var equal to user. It is like your for each loop. Now you're done. What do you need to do? You just need to print it, right? Can I use this? Here I go. See how powerful is your JSTL. You don't need to write. You don't need to write your for loop with the help of Java. So at the bottom, using JSTL, you have your things done. Then just add the break statement. Done. So it's not only this, you can do a lot of other works with the help of this SQL for each. You have a lot of, there is one more stuff here. You're printing the first name, last name, gender, mobile number, email address, date of birth, right? So you can also do a lot of other stuff here. C colon if test equal to, and you can write your test here, whatever you want to do. Whatever the test you want to perform, you can check here. You want to check here, let's see, yeah. You want to print only those records whose last name is GOUD. You want to print only those records whose last name is GOUD. Then you can do this stuff. You want to print only those records whose last name is GOUD. You can do this stuff. You can test it. How will you do it? It's a test equal to, but how do you test it? Then you have another library. You have another library called function. You have another library called functions. And you can use a prefix as a f. Then I don't know how do we do it. Don't remember. For JSTL, you can look at the tutorialspoint.com. Now here you will have something called, should be somewhere here, learn JSP. And in this learn JSP you have standard tag library. Then here you have functions, JSTL functions. JSTL functions. Then you have a lot of functions here: contains, end with, index, length. Oh, you have uppercase, lowercase, string, length, join, index. What? You don't have something called equal to. Okay, this is your library functions. You can just go to this thing, right? And but I want to check for equality, but I don't have any function for equality. How do we check for equality of strings using JSTL? Oh, I think it is here. Let's see whether it works or not. What is the object name we have? The object name is user. What do you want to test? You want to test the last name. If the last name is CURD, then only you want to print it. Yeah, I think we okay. At the bottom. You are using JSTL, Sai, Kalyan, Arun, Kiran, because you have, see, you got only those records whose last name is CURD. So it's simple. Usage of JSTL. Or in case if you want, you can use this library function, the library function tag. So you have a code tag, you have a function tag. These are very important, and you don't need to worry about the rest of the thing. So if you see for the tutorial, you see code tag formatting SQL, XML, JSTL. You can ignore the SQL one because we don't use it, and you can learn the code tag and JSTL tag. If you are so keen to learn the remaining, you can also learn the remaining. They are much easier. Yeah, any questions on the JSTL part which I covered? I hope you understood the purpose of the standard tag library. Yeah. Any questions for me? Or is it simple and clear? Alright. So I assume that everybody is good with this. Let me discuss more about the JSP tag. File menu, new, dynamic web project. More about JSP. I click on the next, click on the next. Click on the finish. Guys, I'm just doing this, right, only to ensure that I covered all the tags. Whatever the tags are in the JSP, I want to demonstrate that, so I'm using it. But the kind of example I'm picking up is not a very good practice. What I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to create a login JSP file. I'm trying to include a login JSP file, and I'm also trying to have a header.html or header.jsp, whatever you want, you can have it. You got a header.html. You have another. You have a footer.html. You got a header.html. You got a footer.html. Now, in this header.html, I'm not doing anything. I just must specify a message. Okay, this is header, and here I specify a message. This is footer. In the header.html, you have a message as this is header, and in the footer.html, you have a message called this is footer. Now, what I do in the login.jsp, I can include the content of header.html with the help of include attribute. With the help of include tag, directive include. With the help of directive include, I can include the header.html into the current page. Then again here, With the help of JSP colon include also I can do it. I can accomplish the same tag using JSP colon include as well as directive include. This is your action include, this is your directive include. And what is the difference between the both? It gets resolved when JSP gets translated. It gets resolved when JSP gets translated to directive include. Now what about your action include? It gets resolved when converted servlet goes for execution. Whereas when you use JSP colon include, it gets resolved when converted servlet goes for execution. In simple words, you can say your @include is resolved at compile time, your JSP colon include is resolved at runtime. That is the difference between both of them. Now within this, I want to have a form. Now so far it's a good practice only. I'll tell you what is not good. So far it is a very good practice. It's a username. You got a password. You're asking for a username and a password. Input type equal to password. Name equal to and here we go. Input type equal to text. Name equal to username. You have a break. You have a break. And you go with the submit button. Input type equal to submit. Value equal to login. Now guys, understand here what I am trying to do is I am trying to call a JSP file, which is not a good programming practice. So if you remember your previous example of the JSPs, it's following a MVC architecture. It's following a MVC architecture. All your servlets are controllers and all your presentation is HTML and JSPs. This is your view concept, VIEW, and you got your model DTO. So you are following a pure MVC architecture. Now what do you mean by MVC architecture? Model view control architecture. So before I complete this JSP tags, let me introduce what is MVC architecture. We already implemented MVC architecture, but I didn't discuss what is MVC architecture. So let me do that. Now these are your browsers. These are your browsers making a request. These are your browsers making a request. Now for every request there is a separate controller. For every request there is a separate controller. For every request there is a separate controller. I'll just do that. So you have requests, and for every request you have a separate controller. So let me write it here. This is a request. What is request? You are doing an insert. Now what are you asking for? You are calling on a get.xml. So when you click on the submit button, it connects to what? It connects to insert servlet. When you click on the HTML, it connects to what? It connects to get servlet. So you make a request, it goes to the servlet. You make a request, it goes to the servlet. Now what is your servlet doing? Your servlet is invoking a DAO. Your servlet is invoking DAO. There will be only one DAO. Your servlet is invoking DAO. What was that DAO? User DAO. Now that user DAO is connecting to what? Is connecting to a database. Now this is your DB. Right? Now what happens here is your insert servlet is invoking a user DAO, and that user DAO connects to DB. Now it's actually a two-way. Sometimes you insert the data into the database. Sometimes you insert the data into the database. Sometimes you read the data. DAO got both the methods, right? DAO got an insert method, delete method, get method, get all method. Get method and get all method. Now what do you do? When you say insert servlet, you pass data object here. When you say insert servlet, you have to pass data object, right? You pass DTO because I had to insert a record. So I'm passing a DTO. Let me write more. You pass DTO. What do you pass? You pass DTO object. Let me specify separately. What do you do? Let me write DTO over there or no? You pass DTO. What you do here is you pass DTO. The servlet is passing DTO. Whereas in this case, whereas in the get servlet case, you receive DTO. In the get servlet case, you receive DTO. Right. When I say receive DTO, you get a user object. Now what you do? So depending on the success and failure, you call respective HTML or respective JSP. Right. You test a condition, no, on the servlet. On the servlet, you check whether it is successful or not. If it is successful, success HTML. If it is successful, success HTML. If it is failure, then you call the failure HTML. So here you call success. Here you call failure. So the controller is responsible for everything. And this is your MVC architecture. Success HTML, failure HTML. In this case, failure JSP or single record.jsp. In this case, you say either failure or single record JSP. Failure. We can have one more, single record JSP. Single record record.jsp. You say failure.html. And here also you test the condition before you call the JSP. If it is null, you call failure. If it is null, you call failure. If it is success, you call single record.jsp. So what is M here? Your DTO is M. What is B here? Success failure or failure single record. What is controller? Insert servlet and get servlet. And this is your MVC1 architecture. This is your MVC1 architecture. This is your MVC1 architecture. For every request you have a controller, and that controller may pass DTO or may receive DTOs, and the controller will invoke the DAO, DAO invoke the database. So actually we are not worried about DAO and DT. What is model? DTO is model. What is view? Success, failure, single record. What is controller? Insert servlet. So you got your MVC architecture. So according to the MVC architecture, whenever you make a request, the request should go to what? Servlet, not JSP. But in this case, I am violating it. In this case, I am violating it. Instead of calling it servlet, I am calling it JSP. Why I am doing this? I am doing this to demonstrate all JSP tags for you. I am doing this to demonstrate all the JSP tags for you. So let me create one more JSP called right click new JSP file validate.jsp, and you see the power of JSP. I will be speaking about more implicit objects. You need the username, right? String username. See, request dot. So request is also an implicit object. Request dot get parameter username. So response is also implicit object. So you can say request dot get parameter, and you can say password. If username dot equals password. If username dot equals password. Alright, if username equals password, I can simply print a message. How can I print a message? I can say out.println, or I can also say response, but you don't need to do this. Response.getWriter.println. Here I say valid user. I say invalid user. So I just want to talk about the request scope and the request attribute and response attribute. So I mean response object, implicit objects. So right click, run as, run on server. So login.jsp will be displayed, and login.jsp will get connected to the validate.jsp on submission. See, this is header, this is footer, whereas if I open login.jsp, I don't see anywhere this is header, this is footer. This is header and this is footer has been included from the header.html and footer.html, which are included with the help of @include and JSP::include. Now enter the values. and you see a message valid user and you see a message invalid user. Where it is happening in validated.js. Now instead of printing these messages, I want to direct it to some other page. Then I need to do this stuff. I'm closing the scriptlet and opening a new. Now within this, I can write HTML now. Stay focused here. JSP :forward. You have something called. Then you can say success.jsp. Now I want to say JSP :forward failure.jsp. Now let me create two more JSP files. You have a success JSP. You have a failure JSP. Right? Now in the success.jsp, I just want to say valid user. In failure.jsp, I want to say invalid user. So what is that you have learned new JSP :forward. Run on server, then you so you're calling a separate page validate.jsp, and from there you are navigating it to what? Success page or failure page. And on the success page you said valid user, and on the failure page you said invalid user. But I want to print the name of the user who is valid and who is invalid. I want to print the name of the user who is valid and invalid on the success and failure. I should forward the name. Stay focused here. JSP :forward. It is a self-ending tag. Now look, I'm closing the stack separately. I'm closing the tag separately. Then within this JSP :forward, I have something called JSP :param, name equal to value equal to. You wanna pass the value, right? Username. So what are you doing? When you are forwarding the page, you are passing a parameter. When you are forwarding a page, you are passing a parameter. When you are forwarding a page, you are passing a parameter. Then how do we obtain that value? How do we obtain that value? How do we obtain the value on the success.jsp? Valid user request dot get parameter. What is the parameter name? User. That's it. Oh. Valid user. Similarly beside the invalid user. Let me run it again. Right click, run as, run on server. JSP :param tag can only only have JSP colon attribute in its body. Okay, I think I will close this param tag. Oh, I'm sorry, after the double quotation. It should work now. Valid user Arun. Invalid user Arun. So I spoke about JSP colon forward, I spoke about JSP colon param. Any questions on the tags, or are they clear? Okay. Then let me discuss one more. There is one more call. I'll go back to the previous example. If you see, you are displaying single record.jsp and you are using the expression language, right? You can disable this expression language. You can disable the expression language, but how do you do that? Simple. You got your page attribute, so page tag. Then you can say is EL ignored. By default, the value is false. Is EL ignored? By default, the value is what? False. Just change it to true. Is EL ignored? By default, the value is false. Change it to true. Now just run it. Get.html. Run as run on server. And you say some username is get. Now you see at the bottom of the page expression language. Since you disable the expression language, what is happening? Go back and change it to false. Come back, refresh it. See at the bottom. Simple, right? Now that is the significance of your is.el ignored attribute. That is the significance of your is.el ignored attribute. So it's JSP is all about knowing about the tags and knowing about the attributes. So you saw is.el ignored. Let me discuss few more tags. I'll quickly create a input.html. Input.html. Then in this input.html, I go with a form. Within the form, I'm asking for the first number. I'm asking for the second number. Type equal to text. Name equal to second number. Input type equal to text. Name equals to first number. Input type equal to submit. Value equal to divide. And I call the page calculate.jsp. Then I told you earlier that according to your MVC architecture, you cannot call it JSP. What is MVC flow? The request should hit the controller. Controller will perform logic and then it called the JSP. Because as I told you earlier that JSPs are not meant for request processing. JSPs are only for presentation. But in this case, I am using JSPs for request processing also, which is not good. You should not do that. Every request should go to the controller only, servlets. But in order to demonstrate the tags, I'm using this. So you have a JSP file. Now in this JSP file, I use scriptlet. So here we go. Int first number, integer dot parse request dot get parameter first number. Then int second number, integer dot parse int result equal to first number by second number. Then you can say out dot println result is good. So let me run the code. Input.html connects to input.html connects to this is fine. But what happens when exception is there? I'm passing second input as a 0. This is not expected, right? Now what we do for these kind of things is, in servlets I did what? In servlets there was an error page in the XML document. Now here also I'll write an error page attribute. Then I say, hey, whenever the exception arises, go to which page? Error.jsp. Go to which page? Error.jsp. Now if you observe, what happened? It says error.jsp is missing. I hope you understood, right? Whenever the exception arises, in the earlier case what happened? It showed you an exception page. In the earlier case, it showed you an exception page. Whereas the moment you add this, it starts looking for what? It starts looking for error.jsp. Now, I will do something in the error.jsp. I create a file, error.jsp. Now I go to the error.jsp. Now in this error.jsp file, first I'll confirm whether this page was called on error or not. Is error page equal to true? I'm confirming whether I was called on error page or not. If error page is equal to true, I'm confirming. If yes, then what I'll be doing is simple. You'll be writing the reason. Exception. Now this exception object is only available only when the error page is true. Exception is an implicit object. Exception is an implicit object only available on is error page equal to true. Otherwise it won't be available. Let's go. Won't work here. Let me open an external browser. Arithmetic exception. Now in case if you try to call error.jsp directly, you'll get null pointer exception. You get a null pointer exception. Why you get a null pointer exception? Because As I said, this exception object is only available if error page equal to true. So in the calculate.jsp, you are doing something, and when exception arises, it should be called. You cannot call error.jsp directly. It should be called only on exception. So you are confirming was this page called on exception or not. If it is called on exception, this exception object is available. If you are not calling it on exception, then it will give you a null pointer exception because there is no exception object available. The exception is an implicit object only available if error page equal to true. Is error page equal to true? Otherwise, it won't be available. Yeah. Any questions on this part? Oh, see, the reason is the browser is a problem. The browser which is integrated with the Eclipse by default is very Internet Explorer, and it's a very old version one. It may be Internet Explorer 5 or Internet Explorer 6. It's an internal browser. That's the reason it is not showing you there. So I use external browser. Because of the browser update, in case if you integrate, you will have options here. You can integrate a new browser. Say internal browser you are using. But if you can use any other browser which is externally available, then it will work on the Eclipse also. But you just need to change the browser settings here. Choose some other browser. Instead of I'm using 0 internal browser, I can use some other browser, then things start working for me. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. If no questions, I'll quickly take you through the MVC2 architecture. Now MVC2 architecture is very simple. Now what exactly happens in MVC2 is you won't be having multiple controllers. You won't be having multiple controllers. According to MVC2 architecture, you won't be having multiple controllers. You will have a single controller responsible for everything. You will have a single controller responsible for everything. According to your MVC2 architecture, you will not have for every request a separate controller. You will not have a separate controller for every request. There will be only one controller. I'm sorry. You will have only one controller. There will be only single servlet. This is your MVC2. This is what your MVC2. So I'll quickly you do that MVC2. I close all, file menu, new, dynamic web project. I'll say MVC2. Click on the next, and I finish. Then what I do is I just dump everything from JSP application. So here we go. This is your application. So I pick everything from here and I just put it into the MVC2. So here we go. It's an MVC2 application. In the MVC2 application, you got your controller. Your controller got so many servlets, right? Instead, I'll develop a servlet. I'll say single servlet. I'll say single servlet. Finish. I have single servlet. Now what I do is, you got your all HTML pages. Your insert.html connects to insert servlet. I direct it to single servlet. You got your get.html connects to get servlet. I direct it to single servlet. You got get all, single servlet. And you have delete, single servlet. So what I'm trying to do is, instead of for every client request, instead of developing a servlet, I'll develop only one servlet. For every client request, I used to develop a separate servlet. But according to MVC2, there will be only one servlet. So all of them are connecting to one servlet now. Now first challenge is to resolve the request is coming from which page. The first challenge is to resolve the request is coming from which page. That's it. So first you see this part, then you can think of the remaining things. I'm trying to find the path from where the request is coming from. Here we go. Insert.html, right click, run as, just give me a minute. Back, I'm sorry. So what I was trying to do, I was trying to run this application. Because we just created this. Click on this button. You see the request, it is telling you, right, with on the servlet we can find out. I spoke about this headers actually. When I spoke about the headers, I told you clearly that okay, we get a lot of information. So now I was able to find the request is coming from which page. Then I can do this stuff. If path dot contains, in the path if it contains insert.html, delete.html, get.html and getAll.html. So you are confirming the request is coming from which page, insert or delete or get or getAll. So once you get that confirmation, what you can do is, whatever the piece of code which you have inside your insert servlet, whatever the piece of code which you have in your insert servlet, whatever the piece of code which you have inside your in your insert servlet, get the complete code and put it in the if block. It's done. Similarly, the piece of code which you have inside your delete servlet, copy and put it inside a delete block. You have a get servlet. The piece of code which you have inside your get servlet, put it inside this. The piece of code which you have in your get all, your job is done. Now you no longer need get, you no longer need get all. You can get rid of them. There is only one servlet which is doing all the things for you. Now refresh, restart your application. Call getall.html. Okay, go to the getall.html, specify here method equal to post. The reason, you know it, because we have defined a post method there. You have a getall.html method equal to post, and you have a single servlet method equal to post. Should work. Okay. Method equal to post. Method equal to post. Run on server. Done. So this is all about MVC2 architecture, where instead of having multiple controllers, you will have a single controller. So any questions on this part? So we did a lot of things today. We did JSP, we did JSTL, we spoke about more JSP tags, then we spoke about MVC1 and MVC2. So you have any questions? Alright, if you are good with everything, then I would like to stop here, and we'll catch you in the next session. And in the next session, I speak about Ajax. Yeah.
Yeah, hi Arun. I don't know what happened to my Eclipse. It's not working for anything, especially the server. I'm talking about the server. It's starting and immediately it stopped again. Is there any problem or?
Oh, it is starting and immediately getting stopped.
Yeah.
Okay. I think, okay, let's look into this. Right, just give me a minute. Okay.
Okay.